This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. In recent years, you might have heard lots of promises in the fashion industry about being more size inclusive. You may have also seen more diversity in modeling and advertising, and a lot of major retailers tackling a huge rebrand to widen their size range.
After its controversial CEO retired in 2014, the Abercrombie brand began repositioning itself, hoping to wipe the slate clean of its past.
Whoever we think really embodies good American, and it's all different ethnicities, all different sizes, heights.
It's not a stumper why all this rebranding has been happening. The plus size market is increasing. It reached a little over $600 billion globally last year and is expected to become a $1 trillion industry in the next decade, with men continuing to make up a majority of the market. Here in the US, nearly 70% of American women are considered plus size. But a study from 2016 found just 18% of clothing sold here caters to them. So, has anything changed since then? And why, despite the booming market, does it seem like the fashion industry is so slow to accept a wider range of body types? Let's re-examine the next hot topic debate in beauty and fashion on this edition of Better Beauty. Across body types, many Americans still feel like shopping for clothes can still be needlessly hard. To really understand why, let's take a look at how our clothing gets made, starting with the design stage itself. Fashion education has been criticized for its lack of training when it comes to designing garments for larger sizes. Oftentimes, students are working with skinnier mannequins around a size 4 or 6. A huge part of the problem involves something called pattern grading, the process of turning a sample size into smaller or larger sizes without changing the style. It's not as simple as adding or subtracting inches. Fabric will look or fit differently on someone who is a size 2 versus a size 20. But instead of paying for refitting and grading work to accurately make plus sizes, companies will often just scale up to smaller sizes, use outdated data on body shapes to size up, or just won't make plus sizes at all.
That's an entire conversation that's left out of these design schools. They're told to just grade up.
Gianluca Russo is the author of The Power of Plus and has written about the lack of plus size representation in fashion education.
And so it's not as easy as adding 2 inches or 1 inch per size. You really have to figure out, if more weight is added here, how does that impact the overall shape of this body, and how do we take this into account? Where does there need to be more fabric? Where does there need to be more stretch? Not only was there an overwhelming amount of area for improvement when it comes to inclusive fashion education, but there was an overwhelming desire for it.
While some major fashion schools have been slowly responding to criticism and expanding their curriculum, it's still the norm for plus-size design to not be required, even if it is taught. It's not just a problem for the design. These problems carry over into manufacturing. Manufacturers typically have minimum order quantities to help meet their bottom lines. So smaller merchandise orders or personalized garments made to order from scratch are naturally more expensive. Those minimum quantities have even gone up since the pandemic as manufacturers struggle with their own labor shortage and other financial hits. This makes it especially hard for smaller brands, even those that prioritize popular larger body types, to find a manufacturing partner. Some small business owners have found this not only keeps their prices high, but sometimes means operating at a loss when expanding their size range.
One of the most challenging things about being a retailer is inventory, right? Retailers are making bets all the time about exactly what styles are going to sell.
Nadia Bujarwa is the founder and CEO of Dia & Co., an online store and subscription service focused on plus-size collections and brands.
The unfortunate chapter that we're in of the Old Navy expansion story, for example, is that 2 or 3 quarters into their body quality campaign, which was truly the first of its kind, they had to say that, they made mistakes on inventory, that maybe they hadn't gotten right how many of the larger units they were buying versus the smaller units, and where in the stores they were going, and what that meant about overall how successful they'd been in planning their inventory, that it was a bigger challenge for them than they anticipated. And the fundamental challenge that we hear time and again with brands is that if a large investment is going to be made, a large return has to be realized quickly. And that equation just never pans out. right? You cannot overcome 30, 40 years of customer expectations in 2 quarters.
While they gave this a year or two for women to come and shop these sizes, they spent 30 years telling them to stay away. So how can you course correct that in just a year or two?
A lot of criticism gets directed at the biggest brands themselves, since they have the most resources to really bring about change. Without putting resources into proper sizing and manufacturing, including plus-size numbers on the clothing rack can only go so far. Clothing sizes can be a confusing minefield, to say the least. Sizes can vary a lot between what brand you're shopping for, and they can take a huge toll on your self-esteem too. Things get even more confusing with the practice of vanity sizing, where brands intentionally set the sizes for clothes incorrectly. This usually involves calling a piece of clothing a smaller size than it actually is, and began as a way to tap into biases against fatness, making shoppers feel happier and more willing to buy when they see they fit into a smaller size than they thought.
What I realized in writing my book is that sizing has become such an emotional thing for so many people because of how it turned them away from so long. And so when you go into a store, there's nothing more othering than finally seeing your size offered, going into the tiny fitting room, trying it on, and realizing that while it says a size 18 on the tag, it still doesn't fit.
But the numbers are also changing to try and reflect the shifting average American body type. You can see in the measurements for women's sizes how they have been steadily rising since we began using these systems in the mid-20th century. A size 12, which would now be about 32 inches in the waist, used to be just 26 inches. The calls for more inclusive sizing in fashion have been going on for years, and it can be frustrating when it seems like the industry takes 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It's going to take an industry-wide reckoning to normalize and prioritize our most common body types and clothing sizes and truly become size inclusive.
I think that the reality as a plus size customer, which I've been, since I was 14 years old, is that it's just really hard to overcome how discouraging it can be to have to navigate all of these, all these challenges that really are unique to our space. But we have to recognize how much extraordinary progress there's been, even in the last 3 or 5 years. The number of brands that have extended their sizes, I think that brands deserve an enormous amount of credit in the amount of investment and in how they have responded to, the desire and the social pressure, honestly, to be more inclusive in their offerings. And now the key is just not flipping back.
For many of us, we still have a hard time finding the clothing options we need, especially for special occasions. It might need a little extra tailoring help or something a bit more custom. So next, we want to talk to one shop in Chicago that's doing just that. Corey Burton Universe is the founder of Uncommon Closet, a custom clothing and tailoring resource for all body types, shapes, sizes, and needs. They're joining us today with their assistant, AJ Mix, who also does some style consulting work with the shop. AJ, Corey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Corey, we'll start with you. Can you tell us a bit about why you founded Uncommon Closet and what it really means to have more inclusive tailoring?
Yeah, so I founded Uncommon Closet because my now wife was having issues finding clothing that fit her. She's a trans woman, so broad shoulders and being 6'2" makes it a little difficult to fit into your standard store sizes. At the time, I was working at a tailor shop, and I didn't feel comfortable bringing her there. They were nice enough, but just not extremely welcoming to the queer community. I wanted to make a space that made everyone feel like family. I've seen a lot more gender nonconforming stores pop up. So we've had, since I've been doing style consultations, I've started noticing more and more stores get added to our list of genderqueer clothing.
I literally doubled the list recently.
Yeah.
AJ, I've been told you've been working on some of the style consultation part of the business. What kind of tips do you have for someone who wants to change up their look but feel like they might be limited in what they can afford or what popular brands fit them?
Yeah. Accessories. I always tell my clients that your wardrobe isn't going to change magically overnight. Like I always have like a necklace or earrings, bows, rings. It really adds layers to what could just be a basic look. Without this, I'm literally just in a button down and jeans.
Since I feel like I'm in the shop right now, I want to see if I can get personal here for a moment. I've lost a little bit of weight, and my best fitting suit is now a little big in the britches for me. What advice would you both give to somebody like me who has seen some body changes and wants to have that reflected in their wardrobe without going broke?
Tailor it.
Get it tailored. You can always, especially if you're thinking that your body's going to change more over time, definitely let your tailor know that, and that way they can still leave seam allowance, and so that way you have room to grow and shrink as time goes on. If you really like your suit and your wardrobe as it is, I don't see anything wrong with just fitting it to the body you currently have. We're here to make you feel good in what you currently have, not what you might have in the future or what you had in the past.
I feel like this is a good opportunity for me to be like, you know what, I need to venture out just a bit more. You know, maybe add a bolo tie. I don't know if I'll do that here.
We were just saying that earlier, that you would look good with a bolo tie.
I think I have to snag one now. Now that you said that, I'm like, okay,
like,
yeah,
bolo tie.
Yeah, no, I was like, I feel like this is the occasion for my dino bolo tie.
It is a sick piece of wear, I must say. I'm writing all these down.
Take
I hope you
notes.
know. I don't have an actual pad and pen here. Uncommon Closet is custom clothing and tailoring resource in Chicago for all body types, shapes, sizes, and needs. AJ, Corey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. It's been wonderful.